Hey everybody, this is Becca. Thanks for checking out my channel, BeccaTownSims. Today I'm showing you guys Spellcaster's Charm. So this is a mansion that I built for the Charm family. It's in Glimmerbrook at Rockridge Canyon, which is where their house used to be. So I have tried several times to rebuild this house and nothing ever really worked, and I think that's because I was trying to make it too similar to what was already there and trying to incorporate too many like Art Nouveau features, because that's what comes with the Realm of Magic pack, is a lot of Art Nouveau build items, and I just couldn't figure out anything that worked for me. So I built this house with no plans. I just wanted it to be grand. I wanted it to be yellow originally. It did not come out yellow because there are not enough yellow swatches. The other one you have, like, you've got like two sidings. One of them's the banana yellow one that comes with Island Living, and the other one is just that plain yellow siding. Anyways, didn't work for me. I wanted something a little bit more textured, and I wanted to be able to have multiple wall coverings that were all yellow. So anyways, it turned out white. But this is the house. It's kind of maybe you could call it Victorian. It's all made up, so what does it matter? You know, none of these are historical homes. Has a really grand entryway, has 4 bedrooms upstairs, and you know, I don't know, it's just a cool house. There's a spellcaster's lair in the basement, which I added as an afterthought because I like built the whole thing and then remembered like, oh shoot, you gotta give them some magical stuff. So that's kind of the overview of the house. Not too much in the gardens because the lot's not that big, but I did build them a little gazebo in the end. So just some of the challenges of the build. Number 1, the angles. I did some crazy stuff with the angles, and it was really hard for me to center the build when I like went with the 3-tiled door and then built the entryway foyer. I wanted to have that back wall of windows, and it took me forever to line up the stairs and line up the, like, I'm gonna call it the solarium. It's not really a solarium, but there's a lot of sun back there. It took me a while to line all that up. And then the upstairs landing was a real pain in the butt to build. Didn't want to cooperate. That's about it as far as the difficulties of the house go. Of course, it always takes a really long time to furnish a house this big. I think it took me 9 hours, 8 hours from start to finish to do this build. Mostly the furnishing. Exteriors are usually like pretty easy. There's no custom content in this, like always, and I think that's all you need to actually know about the building of this house. So maybe I'll remember some other stuff to tell you guys while I'm watching this video right now, recording this, but I don't think there's anything that was like particularly hard to do. Any tips that I could really give you. This is just a big build, so to keep you somewhat entertained, I'm going to tell you this story that I heard the other day. So I'm in quarantine. Everybody I know is in quarantine right now. Maybe you watch this video when the world's gone back to normal. I don't know. But like, one of the things that I miss the most about the outside world is gossip, because nobody is doing anything right now. And so every time you talk to your friends, you're just like, yeah, I stayed home today, I played video games, I like did my work online or whatever. Like, nobody's going anywhere and they're not seeing people, and therefore nobody is bringing me like any tea. And so I've been kind of like missing just hearing what people are doing. But I heard the most wonderful tea the other day, and don't laugh, but it is from the 1300s. Okay, I was watching a history thing, and I was learning about Edward II of England, and that boy was a mess, let me tell you, okay? So this is like hundreds and hundreds of years old. I can't do math. Oh my god. I'm not even gonna try. Anyways, hundreds of years old. But Edward II was a real piece of work, okay? This is what I learned. I'm gonna tell you guys, this is not accurate. Let me put my disclaimer, because I'm not researching anything right now. I'm literally just telling you what I remember from watching a video the other day. So anyways, Edward, right? he's the king's son. His life's all cool or whatever, except it's not that cool, because he's got his boy, his best friend, this guy Gaveston, and Gaveston was exiled because sounds like he was a bit of a jerk, and nobody liked Gaveston, and they thought that he was a terrible influence on Edward II. And your boy Eddie loved this dude, okay? And so when his dad died, Edward wasn't like, cool, I get to be the king now. He was like, oh, bring my boy Gaveston back out of exile. I want to party real hard with this guy. So Gaveston comes back, and he and Eddie have a real good time, and they start partying. And Edward gets engaged to Isabella of France because things were bad with the French, because things are always bad between the English and the French, okay? So he is marrying her for political reasons, and so they have the wedding. And I don't know if this is true or not. This is just what I heard, okay? This is just a rumor. I'm just gossiping here about these people who have been dead for several hundred years. So at the wedding, Edward totally ignored his bride, Isabella, and he was just talking to his boy Gaveston, and they put up the wedding decorations, and instead of putting Isabella's crest and motto or whatever up, he put his motto and Gaveston's, and they just totally ignored her. And France was like, okay, my dude, you're not, this was supposed to be an alliance, and now you're just neglecting our girl here that you just married. So this Edward, he made a ton of bad decisions, and that was just number one. So this guy was just hanging out. He was young, but he was more interested in partying with his buddy Gaveston than he was in being the king. So the nobles eventually were like, hey, yeah, there's the king, but there's also the Council of Nobles, and we have to do something about this guy. We have to get rid of Gaveston, because honestly, the king is so obsessed. And TBH, Edward and Gaveston might have been hooking up on the DL. Don't know. It was a long time ago. Not sure. But either way, the nobles were like, look, he's the king, and normally we don't care who you're friends with, but this guy is getting in the way of the kingly business. So they all banded together, and they're like, hey, Edward, guess what? We're taking your power. We're gonna write these ordinances, boy, and basically we get to make the decisions, and our decision is that you've got to exile Gaveston because we do not want him around you. And I'm pretty sure the implication was do it or we kill you. And so Edward was like, yeah, okay, I guess you can do it. So he had to surrender a bunch of his power to the nobles, and he exiled Gaveston, but it did not last very long, because he was like, I don't want to be king if I can't party with my boy. And so eventually he was like, hey, look, I know that these ordinances were signed or whatever, but no, throw them in the fire, get rid of them, they're done, they're over, bring Gaveston back. And the nobles, particularly this guy Lancaster, he was, don't remember, a duke, something important. He was one of the more powerful ones anyways, and he was like, look, Edward, if you bring back Gaveston, we're gonna kill him. You signed this paper, and basically you said if Gaveston comes back to this country, we get to kill him. But of course, Edward, making these bad decisions, was like, no, we're bringing him back, and this is all stupid, and I'm not gonna abide by your ordinance anymore, and we're basically gonna cause I don't know, did it cause a civil war? Was everybody just fighting on the DL? I don't know, but things were not good. And Gaveston came back, and Lancaster was like, I told this boy, I told him if he brought back this guy, I was gonna kill his guy. So of course he captured Gaveston, and he took him out to his estate, and he brought him out to the woods or the fields or wherever was a good place to kill people, and he killed him. And then the King Edward was like, what, you just killed my boy? And he was super depressed because they were really, really close. But what could Edward do at that time? He was in a real hard place. He'd kind of defied this order. All the nobles were bullying him because he probably deserved it. He was at war with Scotland because, again, England is always fighting with the French. Pretty sure they're always fighting with Scotland too. So they were at war with Scotland. It's the whole Braveheart timeline, okay? And England wasn't doing so well. Edward was mismanaging stuff. I'm pretty sure something shady happened with the war, but I don't really remember the details. So skip ahead, okay? Skip the foggy parts of my memory and skip to this, okay, so your boy Edward is making friends with this family, the Despensers, okay? And the Despensers were not cool. First of all, they're probably criminals. Second of all, they were definitely taking a lot of land from some nobles who absolutely did not want their land taken. There was like Daddy Dispenser, and then there was like the younger Dispenser. Both their names were Hugh because people back then gave their kids the same names all the time. So Hugh Dispenser the younger and your boy King Edward were like, they got real tight, they got real close. I am guessing that it was romantic, but I am not a historian, and I am not basing this on any evidence except for the fact that, I don't know, it just feels right to me. It feels good. I ship a romance, you know? Anyways, so he made friends with the Dispensers. They were not popular, and the nobles were like super unhappy about it. And they were like, nah, we're tired of the Dispensers. You gotta exile them too. And then Edward's queen, Isabella, also did not like the Dispensers. One, because again, like, they criminals, so that's fair. And they also kind of like took her kids away for reasons that are a little bit unclear to me. They were like, nah, Edward, you gotta send your and Isabella's kids. They send them to live with like Hugh Dispenser's wife or something like that. And Isabella was like, not happy about that. Plus, they're fighting with the French again some more, like always. So, fast forward in time, the Dispensers got exiled, they got unexiled, don't know when any of that happened. Disclaimer again, not a historian. And blah, 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 war with France. So, they couldn't get the war sorted. It had something to do with some kind of land dispute. I think it's always about land, isn't it? So they were like, Isabella, go hang out with your brother, the king. I think it was King Charles. They're like, go hang out with King Charles. You know, you're his sister. Go be our emissary. Go negotiate with him. Make us look good. Like, you're our queen. We love you. So they sent her to France. She got over to France and she was like, you know what? I'm not going back. She made peace, sure. But then she just stayed. And she got her kids sent there too. So then she had little baby, probably his name was Edward. I don't know. Whoever Edward the second son was. She had him with her in France. And she was like, we are not going back. We are staying in France. And there's this other guy in this story. Don't remember where he comes in. This guy, his name is Roger Mortimer. Let me tell you. When I heard the name Roger Mortimer, I don't know why, but I was like, I bet that dude was hot. And Isabella, the queen, must have thought so too, because her and Roger Mortimer were definitely hooking up. And I totally ship it, and I totally love it, even though who knows what this guy looks like, because he's been dead for quite a while. So her and Roger Mortimer, who also hated the Dispensers because they had definitely stolen a bunch of his land, they teamed up and they're like, we're gonna take the Dispensers down. Oh, and I forgot to mention that like Hugh Dispenser the younger was also like kind of shady towards a bunch of like ladies, and Isabella, we're gonna call her a proto-feminist, was not down with that. So she hated him for like those personal reasons as well. So her and Roger Mortimer were like, bruh, let's team up. We're lovers. We hate Edward. We hate the Dispensers. We're gonna team up and we are gonna like go to some more war. So they also went to war, and they did a really good job. So they got their forces or whatever together, and they rode out somewhere, sometime, don't exactly know when. So they like rode out, and they captured Hugh Dispenser, and I think they got Edward too. They definitely got him later if it wasn't then. But they got Hugh Dispenser, and oh my god, okay, the juiciness of this execution, juicy is the wrong word, the horror of this execution. Okay, now look, I don't know how much of this is true, because that's the thing about history, is that if you don't have a first-hand account, and even if you do have a first-hand account, it's not like they were making videos, you know. It was like some bruh like writing in his journal, and he might exaggerate things because it sounds fun, or he might like write something to flatter the people in charge, or somebody might write about it 200 years later who wasn't even there. They have no idea what they're talking about. So I cannot say for sure if this is true, but let me tell you what I heard about Hugh Dispenser's death scene, we'll call it. It's like some real Game of Thrones stuff, okay? So basically, Isabella like hated this guy, so they got him, they tied him up, They stripped him naked. They paraded him through the streets. They like let people write on his body like sins he had committed or something. Again, this guy was definitely a criminal, so I'm sure they had plenty to write. But then again, I'm like, is this true? Because how many people could write back in the 1300s? Not that many of them. So anyhow, so maybe they let people write on him, but they definitely paraded him naked through the streets. They got him to wherever like Execution Square was. And then they like hung him, but they didn't like let him die from hanging. They just like choked him a little bit, like for fun on the rope, cut him down, and then definitely hardcore tortured him. So some people say that he was just like hung and drawn and quartered, which is bad enough. But then there is some other like old-timey gossip, propaganda, whatever you want to call it, that Isabella was really hardcore, and she was like, this guy ruined my marriage, which is another reason where I'm like, hey, were Hugh and Edward hooking up? I don't know, I wasn't there, but Isabella might have said that, and she might have had, use your imaginations, a very sensitive part of Hugh cut off and thrown into a fire while he was still alive and watching. And then she might have had him disemboweled while he was like still watching and still alive, and like pulled out his organs or whatever, real nasty stuff, thrown him into a fire, and then finally let the poor guy die by like cutting off his head and then cutting his body up into 4 different pieces. So there's your quartering right there, and then putting it up on the gates of London. And here is the craziest part, fam. This other account that I encountered listening to like my little history video was that this lady was like sitting there watching this guy get disemboweled and chopped apart and eating her snack. Like she had like her Lunchable, and she was just like watching this guy like have his entrails pulled out. So like if that is true, Isabella was a cold lady. All right, like that's nuts. Can you imagine? I can't even imagine any of that, because it's really fascinating to me how like distant we are from just like casually watching people get executed. And it's definitely a good thing, because like I don't want to live in the Game of Thrones world. Like that's for TV, that is not for real life. So anyways, that is my history summary of this old-timey 1300s gossip for you about the execution of Hugh Despenser. They also probably killed your boy Eddie too. He was caught. They had him like locked up somewhere, and he was in the care of like Roger Mortimer's cousin or somebody somewhere, and they didn't quite know what to do with him, because they were like, I don't know, we can't just like openly murder a king, right? Like people would frown on that. So they got him to kind of pass his crown on to his son that Isabella had. So they crowned her son instead, and then they were kind of just left with this like king problem. So they probably had him murdered, but it's not exactly clear. There are rumors that there was this note that they sent out, and it was in Latin, and if you read it one way, it was basically like, let the king live, and if you read it another way, I don't know, like without the comma or something, it was like, you gotta kill the king. So maybe they ordered his execution. I mean, they almost certainly did, right? Like, these people are all murderers, even though, like, I'm kind of supporting Isabella in this, because, like, I love a strong historical lady. She definitely went overboard with that, like, Hugh Despenser murder. So they're all bad people is the moral of my story. So don't time travel. If you ever have the opportunity to go back in time and you have to, like, interact with time, like, don't. They're all murderers, okay? Everybody's a murderer. And that's the end of my story. And this is basically the end of my build too. I realize now I didn't tell you anything about the building process, but I don't know, you saw it on the screen or you fast forwarded and you only wanted to see the pictures anyway, so you got what you came here for. Maybe a little bit more, you know, heartwarming story of the royals of the 1300s. This little gazebo on the back, that's kind of interesting. I made a little circle by making the curved porches and fitting them together. You guys can do that too. Put a statue on it, because there's this statue in this graveyard. It's called Orphan Cemetery. It's in the town where I'm from. It's a very scary cemetery, and in the middle of it there's this little round what do you call that little round gazebo stone, and it has these Victorian statues of the Victorian family that is buried there, and that statue always creeped me out so hard. People used to say, like, if you went at night you could see the statues like move or something. Unconfirmed, because your girl does not go into cemeteries at night, except for the one time that I did and I got really scared and then I left, okay? But anyways, beside the point, I made a little gazebo. I made this house. I don't have any hot tips for you, but you can download it on the gallery as the Spellcaster's Charm. You can find me on Instagram as BeccaTownSims. That's also my gallery name. And of course, you can find me here as BeccaTownSims. So please like this video, comment. You can correct my poor history knowledge. You can tell me a little bit about history, and you can definitely subscribe to my channel because you are awesome. So thank you for watching.